Okay.
Drake,
Lily.
how was Kansas City?
Kansas City was great. I been to Kansas City before, but I was really excited to go back this time with our whole little crew. And it kind of, I think after we were in some rural parts of America for quite some time, so it was kind of nice to get back to like just a more urban environment, like in general.
It was really good to see my friends in Kansas City. And Drake and I had been, working real hard. So we got to kind of cut loose and have some fun and eat some barbecue. And we got to experience some queer nightlife in Kansas City, which was really fun. We sang karaoke.
The ballerina, you must have seen her dancing in the sand.
We finally had like all the moms with us that were going to be there. And so it was no longer just Rachel having to be the sole lucky mother. And so we actually had like a group of, I'd say maybe like 10 people that came to the Mom Talk. We did it at the Transgender Institute. They just put chairs in a circle and everyone just sat and kind of shared stories about the moms shared what they were working on, and they had people sign the banners. It was nice to see the moms provide that space for these parents that weren't really used to it.
And then I think our interviews in Kansas City were super awesome because we got a great kind of just like a lot of different types of people this time. We talked to a senator, and then we spoke to like somebody who's running for office, and then we spoke to the Transgender Institute as well. So it was like a good group of people.
Tell us your name and what you do here in Kansas City.
So my name is Justice Horn. I use he/him pronouns. I would say, just to sum it all up, just community activists, a lot of human rights policies and proactive and reactive things we've done here in Kansas City to make sure everyone's heard and loved here.
Awesome. And you recently ran for
Jackson County Legislature.
Legislator for District 1,
right?
Yep. We were reading up. So why don't you tell us a little bit about why you wanted to run and just a little bit about your campaign?
Yeah, so what made me initially run was first looking at the county and seeing that there wasn't a lot of representation. I grew up throughout Jackson County, from growing up in the middle of Jackson County Independence to eastern Jackson County and Green Valley to Blue Springs, then wrestling in college up in South Dakota, and then coming back my adult life in Kansas City. So first, looking around and not seeing a lot of representation, and two, a lot of the policies we fought for here in Kansas City should be taken countywide. For example, a conversion therapy ban that happened, I think, 2 or 3 years here in Kansas City should happen countywide. Strengthening our non-discrimination ordinance countywide. 3 years before the Stonewall riots of New York, you had over 40 representatives, 40 activists from 15 organizations here in Kansas City meeting for kind of the path forward for LGBTQ people and LGBT rights. So as it says, Kansas City played a pivotal role in the early struggle for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender rights. So what a lot of people don't know that happened here in Middle America, and why this was chosen was because it was in Middle America. We all wanted to move in coalition as one community. So folks from all over this country met here in the middle of the country to really track where our path would be moving forward. And here in 2022, as a young queer person myself, being able to openly walk and run as a queer person, there are a lot of people who sacrificed that for me. So, it's important we honor this history.
Can you give us some perspective on your perspective
Mm-hmm.
of the anti-LGBTQ legislation that's making it its way through the Missouri Senate and House?
Well, you can't say that it is not a national conversation, because it is. You're seeing predominantly Republican-controlled and super-controlled state legislatures that are making this an issue when, it really isn't. You have states like Florida, states like Iowa, where there are really just 4 or 5 trans athletes in the entire state, but have moved the entire state government to make this an issue.
We've seen a whole slew of these bills, whether it's kind of a don't say gay and school bill, anti-trans sports bill, taking away medical licenses from doctors. That kind of stuff is all over the place. I'm State Senator Greg Razer. I represent the heart of Kansas City, Missouri in our state Senate. Obviously, these aren't issues that I think the vast majority of these legislators care about. It's an issue that they realize polls very well. Although I do want to point out that in the state of Missouri, the 2 most anti-trans state senators both ran for Congress and both got beat easily. And Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler, who has built her career on being the most homophobic or transphobic person in any room she walks into. She ran for our open United States Senate seat in the Republican primary. Her first statewide ad announcing and introducing herself to the rest of the state was how transphobic she was.
I'm Vicky Hartzler. I ran and coached girls track, and I won't look away while woke liberals destroy women's sports. Women's sports are for women, not men pretending to be women. I'm Vicky Hartzler. I approve this message.
She got crushed. So, I would say if you're doing this for political reasons, y'all got your asses beat. The push we're seeing against trans individuals and trans rights is tied in with this push to ban Black history, critical race theory. When you get into these primaries, and especially what we're seeing in Missouri are these in the Republican primaries, is it's getting more and more and more extreme, and you have to keep going farther to the right to win it. And you're seeing these 2 sides come to a head. You're seeing it nationally. I wish people paid more attention to what was happening in their state capitals, because we don't have the power of Congress, but we have a lot more power than your city council. We're this governmental body in between, and there are some scary things going on in state capitals. With the overturn of Roe, Missouri is one of the states with a trigger law. Abortion is outlawed in this state. And as we look at the exact wording of that trigger law, not only is abortion outlawed, I think there's a pretty strong argument to make that any form of contraception is illegal in this state. It's pretty extreme. So we have those things that we have to fight. Arguments I hear against passing our non-discrimination bill. One is, I think, more of an old school business Republican mentality of we don't want another subset of people having the ability to sue an employer. It's going to cost an employer money. My response is, well, don't fire someone simply for being LGBT. I think we'll overcome that. The other is this idea that, and the far right is trying to use this, that they want to be the uniters, and that by adding LGBT people, we're adding another subset of people. We're classifying another subset of people, so we can't add anymore. One day I do think the dam will break, we'll get it done. In the meantime, we have to mitigate damage.
I'm Caroline Gibbs. I'm founder and director of the Transgender Institute here in Kansas City. We've been around for more than 20 years serving the transgender population.
My name is JoAnna Ramsey. I'm the office manager and executive assistant.
Just a tiny bit of background. I had met, just serendipity, a fairly big group of trans men and women. And they literally, 25 plus years ago, taught me my beginnings. I'm a cis person. They taught me my beginnings as a clinical therapist. And so it happened from that. They said, you need to do this because nobody is doing it. And there was nobody there. There was maybe a therapist on the West Coast, a therapist on the, in New York or whatever, but virtually no one.
So I met Caroline many years ago. At the time I was incarcerated. My position here is very unusual because normally someone with a felony background would be immediately dismissed for like an office management position, especially in a medical office. I'm actually the first trans woman in the state of Kansas to receive hormone replacement therapy while incarcerated. There was no pathway for someone to be able to access health care if they were trans or if they had gender dysphoria. But at the time, Laverne Cox had just been on the cover of Time magazine, and the article was called The Transgender Tipping Point, and I'll never forget it because I saw that, devoured everything, and I was like, there was like some kind of like reflected intrinsic truth that I saw within myself on that magazine that I had not seen before. And so it gave me a name and a description, and then I began to, as best I could while incarcerated, educate myself. I was very resourceful in the ways that I would get information. The person who was a couple cells down had a cell phone, so I would use that to like look up specifically information about medical care, treatment, standard operations. The Transgender Institute stepped in, and then I started doing one-on-one sessions with Caroline via the phone. And then eventually she brought a group of trans women in. I had never even met another transgender person before. I'm from a pretty small town. And they actually came into the prison to meet with me and to talk, and also just kind of get like a thermometer reading of like where I was at, kind of. Mm-hmm. And so that was a radical experience for the facility because they had never ever had anything like that happen before, so in the whole state.
I stared daggers at those guards, and they stared daggers at me.
Being in a men's facility with no access to care was every single day trauma. There was not one time I could walk from my cell to like the lunchroom or to any other place without constant cat calls or worse. And so I had to learn to adapt in that environment and become very resourceful and very guarded and very sharp. In specific reference to anti-trans legislation, it's harmful in that for the first time, politicians are taking issue with medical terminology. They're taking issue with a real medical diagnosis. They are ignoring the medical community vastly. Many of the conservative talking points and arguments that they use leave out, and to coin their own phrase, biological realities of certain individuals. I myself happen to actually be intersex, not technically transgender. So my biological reality is that I also have a uterus. And so a lot of the policies that come out to be kind of like skirt checking policies don't necessarily fit for every single person. There's the binary understanding is just, it's outdated and it's not in congruence with current like scientific thought.
You know, we gotta have a revolution again. We gotta start again. And it just breaks my heart that we have to do that. But this is not a good time for trans people at all. It's very scary.
There was a night in the winter of 1996 that I was sitting in my childhood bedroom late at night on a school night. I had my suicide note written and a weapon in front of me. If you would have told that kid, one day, you're gonna be a college graduate, you're gonna live in big Kansas City, that city's gonna select you, they're gonna pick you to represent the heart of the city in the state senate, and you're gonna stand on that floor and fight for this community that at that moment you were ready to say, I'd rather be dead than be a part of it, or to tell people, I would have never believed you. But here I sit, and I tell trans kids that come into my office all the time. Jolie Justice in 2006 from Kansas City was the first openly LGBT state senator. 1994 from Kansas City, Tim Van Zant was the first elected LGBT person at any level in the state of Missouri. I grew up on a cotton farm. I'm the second in Missouri history to be open in the state Senate. One day, one of you kids in this room are going to be the first openly trans person to serve on that floor. That day will happen, and it might be you.
See you next time in
Nashville, Tennessee.